Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's event. I hope everyone's well, and I hope everyone's having a fantastic evening after a fantastic evening last night with a great result. I have to say, an inspiring performance. What a night for the team. Gareth Southgate is a truly inspiring leader, although I still think maybe he's missing out on having our own James Ward-Prowse in the team. But anyway, Sunday is going to be a nail-biting event, and I'm not expecting to see as many people in the office on Monday as perhaps we have today. So this morning, I can't promise you quite the same evening as last night, but what I can promise you is a full packed session this morning in our second of our series of Unlocking Southampton's Potential. I feel a real excitement in and around the city at the moment, and a real enthusiasm from the business community to work together to make a difference to the prosperity of the city and to put it firmly on the map as a place to live, work and play. However, I don't think we'll be able to do that without embracing on the critical importance around the sustainability and climate change agenda. Hence, this morning's subject is all around the drive to net zero. But first, a quick introduction from myself. My name is Julian Gray. I'm the Market Senior Partner of PwC in Southampton, and I'm delighted to be co-hosting this morning's event with Peter Taylor, Managing Partner of Paris Smith and Chair of Southampton Chamber of Commerce, and Kerry Moore, Regional Director of NatWest. I said, action-packed morning, this action-packed session this morning. The focus of the event is raising awareness and how we can make more of a difference to climate change in Southampton and the surrounding region. Business opportunities for achieving net zero and the importance of the regional ambition, showcasing some best practice in addressing climate change, and considering what action the business community can take collectively to address climate change as we approach COP26 in November later this year. As I said, we have a busy agenda, and we'll start this morning with Dr. Sarah Ivory, lecturer in climate change and business strategy, University of Edinburgh Business School, looking at the climate change fundamentals, the science, climate change in the business context, and what's been happening today. We're then going to hear from a number of other speakers. I'm delighted we're joined by Louis Clement from Marine Physics and the Ocean Climate Group at the world-renowned National Oceanography Centre right here on our doorstep. We'll then hear from James Kafari, Director of Growth and Product from B Corp UK. And then we're going to hear some fascinating B Corp studies from Nancy Hine, founder of True Horizon, and Tim Wookey, Managing Director, Amamus Specialty Coffee. And finally, I'm delighted that we are being joined today by Councillor Daniel Fitzhenry, our new leader of Southampton City Council. Once we've heard from our speakers, Kerry will be chairing a Q&A session, and then Peter will be doing a wrap-up and our summary. As you heard at the start, we will be recording the session, and we'll be making some vlogs coming out of here, some of the key clips and messages coming out from the session this morning. One question we do have for you to answer in the chat as we go through this morning's session is something that's really important and provides a great opportunity to the area. We want to understand how it fits in with the net zero agenda. So the question we'd like to hear from you is, how can the Freeport be a catalyst for the net zero agenda? But first, we're going to kick off with a quick poll question. We've got a few of these as we go through the session this morning. But the first one we want to hear your views on is, how often does your regular board agenda include environmental and sustainability topics? So that we'll quickly flip to the poll, and then when we've seen the poll, I'll hand over to Dr. Sarah Ivory. I think we get the result frequently. I think that's probably improving. I think it's going on most agendas, and certainly from my experience and some of my clients, it is on every agenda now, and it's a key part of the decision. It's not a separate to their debate or their topics. It is part of every investment decision. It comes onto their agenda in terms of considering, does it go to that part of climate change and sustainability and their own net zero agenda. So with that, I'll hand over to Sarah Ivory. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. I have 10 tiny minutes to talk to you about climate change. It's nowhere near enough. We don't even cover everything in our MSc programs based on climate change, but I will do my best. So let's jump straight into it. So if we go to the next slide, Sam, I wanted to start with a general question for you to muse on throughout this whole session today, and including my session, of why does business exist? So in the next slide, you'll see two possible options, and we're going to think about that for about 20 seconds. Go for it, Sam. So which you agree with most? A business exists to make a profit and does so by producing goods and services, or a business exists to produce goods and services and in doing so makes a profit? If I had longer, we would reflect on that for a lot longer, but I'm going to jump into climate change, and we're going to come back to this question in our last slide this morning. So let's jump into thinking about climate change. So understanding climate change. So on the next slide, you're going to see what we call, that you can go for that now, Sam, the climate stripes, or some people call them the warming stripes. On the left is the last 12,000 years using ice cores of telling us the average temperature of the world. You'll see the ice age and the mini ice age there. On the right, on the middle is a blow up of the last little bit there. And on the right is the Economist's front page from a couple of years ago. And these are called the climate stripes. But what worries me is not what we're looking at here. It's that we need to stop thinking about this year as the warmest, the last 100 years, but the coolest one for the next 100 years. And what was interesting is that a meme, and we know that memes aren't true, but they get to the heart of some truth, was of someone in the US in the recent, in Canada actually, in the recent heat dome event there, saying, I've never been this hot, and someone else saying, you'll never be this cool again. So thinking about that sense of where we are going with climate change. On the next slide, we'll see some of the emission sources of climate change. So if we go to that now, Sam, please. We all know that greenhouse gases are being pumped into the atmosphere, and that is thickening or intensifying the greenhouse effect, which is causing global warming, but also then destabilizing very delicate climate systems, ocean systems, biodiversity systems. The point sources of all those emissions are listed here. Mainly, you've got carbon dioxide from fossil fuels, methane from livestock, agriculture, industry, and waste. Nitrous oxide, again, from agriculture, automobiles, and industry. And then this big group called F gases, which is largely from refrigeration and air conditioning. So one of the first things we want to do when thinking about climate change is work out, what are we pumping into the atmosphere? What is it that we are most responsible for? And what are the areas that we want to most focus on? The way we do that in climate change, on the next slide, please, Sam, is we think about different categories of emissions. So in the middle there, we've got what we call Scope 1 emissions. These are the direct emissions that come from our businesses or our organisations or our institutions. So for example, PwC on this call will have direct emissions from their company-owned vehicles. But actually PwC won't have that many other direct emissions. Whereas, for example, a coal-fired power plant, the direct emissions of that will be the coal that is burned, releasing carbon dioxide and some other emissions into the atmosphere. For many businesses, a bigger issue is not just your direct emissions, but your indirect emissions. And there are two different categories of indirect emissions. Scope 2 indirect emissions, which you'll see in the red there, they are our use of electricity, energy, or other heat and steam sources. So these are indirect. If you, in your business premise right now, turn on the electricity, you do not emit anything from your premises, but you have control over that switch. And that's why they get a special category. So these is called Scope 2 emissions. And finally, Scope 3 emissions are the biggest category for most of indirect emissions. And this is the emissions that are upstream, so in our supply chain, or in business travel, or in employee commuting, as well as downstream, so in the use of our products, or the end of life treatment of our products, or for a company like PwC perhaps, or a bank company like NatWest Group, for the financing of different projects that we do, or the consulting of different projects. And I think it's important to think about these three scopes as we think about our own businesses and where we should most focus our energy. For example, if a large bank reduced their direct emissions, Scope 1 emissions, to zero, that would be great, and we want them to do that. But actually, they're probably going to have greater influence and impact by working on their, for example, investments or financed emissions, and helping the companies they are investing or financing reduce those. So we have to think carefully about where we can get the biggest impact from what we do. On the next slide, what you'll see is what I describe as my most boring slide, but it can be really valuable to think about some of these terms which you're going to hear more and more of. And I just want to go through a few of them before we get to the heart of my presentation. That is carbon offsets. That's buying offsets that happen elsewhere in order to call yourself zero. That can be good, but there are complexities with that. Net zero or carbon zero is typically used when our carbon dioxide emissions from an entity is balanced by removing the same amount from the atmosphere. However, that can also be not just carbon dioxide, but all greenhouse gases. Carbon neutral is where we achieve that, but also we can buy emissions to offset whatever we can't achieve. Carbon negative is used normally to describe removing more emissions from the atmosphere than we emit. Annoyingly, some people call that carbon positive. So again, you can see here the complexity of terms. And finally, residuals. And this is the emissions that are deemed too challenging, either technically, economically, or possibly politically, to reduce to zero. What is a residual? That is a very complex debate. We can't have it today. Some people would argue air travel. Some people would say absolutely not air travel. Some people would say agriculture. Some people would say absolutely not agriculture. It depends on what we deem as essential. Jumping ahead to one slide, please, Sam. These are some examples, and you'll have access to these slides of companies that have gone on a net zero pathway or a carbon negative pathway. Microsoft have recently announced that they are aiming to achieve carbon negative by 2030. And VLux have actually looked to their past to estimate all of their emissions from their past in order to remove the same amount from the atmosphere, so they get to lifetime net zero. And you can see the links on that slide, which you'll have access to later, to get a better sense of that. And next slide there, please, Sam. What I want to think about here, and I know this is a race, but please stay with me, is the scale of emissions recently. I think sometimes we can think about this as being something that's happened since 17 or 1800. Yes, but actually we have doubled cumulative CO2 in the atmosphere since 1990. That is relatively recently. If we had acted then, we would be in a much different situation today. But I want you to think 30 years hence, and the people then saying, if they had acted in 2021, we would be in a much different situation now. And that's what's on our table today. So my last 3 minutes that I've been allocated, Sam, if you could move forward, is me thinking about business and climate change for you, and hopefully giving you a tool that you can take back to your organizations to help you get your head around this incredibly complex system. So in the next slide, what you'll see is we think about the role of business. And I want you to think about two little words, and those words are of and on. So on the left there, you've got the impact of climate change on business. We're thinking here of extreme weather, sea level rise, drought, flooding. And on the right, you've got the impact of business on climate change. We're thinking of building and building standards, deforestation, pipelines, etc. This framing will help you in your business because, first of all, it is a framing. It helps frame your analysis, and I'll show you how to do this on the next slide. It also drives conversations of all of the different elements of climate change and makes it feel less easier to clarify those. It clarifies positions, and that's because what is happening here is that sometimes people are talking about the impact of climate change, sometimes people are talking about the impact on climate change, and we're missing the discussion. We don't realize we're talking about different things. A few other reasons there, but I want to get onto the actual slide. The last one, though, coping with complexity. This is a complex, terrifying, sometimes thing. You've got wildfires, heat domes, floods. How do we cope with that? Well, the next slide, Sam, should help you to do this. You can draw this yourself. It is a simple 2x2 matrix, as every business school has to present. And it provides you with a negative and a positive column, and the impact of climate change and the impact of climate change on business and the impact of business on climate change. This was one I did for a financial services company. And you can see that you've got the negative impact of climate change on business is the risk, and the positive impact of climate change on business is your opportunity. because there are opportunities coming out of this, people looking for climate solutions, etc., etc. The negative impact of business on climate change is your contribution to the crisis, and you are contributing to the crisis. But the positive is your contribution to the solution, and you can contribute to the solution. The key issue with this framing, as you start to toy with it yourself, is thinking about where you should best focus your efforts. And typically that will be one specific box, but not forgetting that you need to focus on all boxes as well. Moving on next, Sam, thank you. I want to come back to this. You're going to hear from some amazing B Corps shortly, and I want you to think about this. I asked you to consider whether you agreed that business exists to make a profit and does so by producing goods and services. Business exists to produce goods and services, and in doing so makes a profit. But just maybe business exists to support a thriving society by producing goods and services, and in doing so makes a profit. And that shouldn't be mutually exclusive. And B Corps will show you that it doesn't have to be. My final slide here is for us not to forget about the climate stripes. In the middle there, yes, the planet got destroyed, but for a beautiful moment in time, we created a lot of value for shareholders, and just thinking about what that really says about us and what we value. And finally, my contact details there, because I've raced through so much of this and I would really like to engage. And you can follow me on Twitter. I often tweet on issues of this, but also please do get in touch. How did I go there, Julian? Was that too much of a race?
That was perfect, Sarah. Thank you very much. Very much for that. Spot on to time, I think. Fantastic.
Thank you. Well, I'm here to answer questions as well throughout the morning.
Excellent. Thank you. We will move on because we have, as we're tight on time, but Louis, welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning from National Oceanography Centre. I will hand over to you.
Hi, thank you very much for having me today. So I'm Louis Clement. I work at the National Oceanography Centre here in Southampton. So I'm a physical oceanographer. I look at all the effect of the heat and the global large-scale circulation that the ocean has on our climate. So I'll give you a quick overview of what we do here and how we can tend to go to this net zero, to be a net zero oceanographic capability. So the NOC, the National Oceanography Centre, is a charity with around 600 staff and an annual turnover of 60 million. We have as well colleagues in Liverpool and a large building here in Southampton. So it's an independent charity. We became independent recently. And so as a charity, what we do is mostly science. So we look at, we try to solve problems of marine science, going from the biology to the chemistry to sea level rise. As a research, we do produce research papers. So we have this link with the academia. So we try to have our projects funded by looking for money via proposals. And one of the most important thing that we do is obviously to connect with the public. So to discuss with the public. So we do presentations, but we also via social network or via newspaper. And we also interact with government and non-government organizations, and as well with industry. As part of the NOCs, we also have this trading subsidiary, which is called the NOC Innovations, which is a non-charity activity and which deals directly with government and non-government and industry. So one of our main aim here at the NOC is to be a net zero oceanographic capability by 2040. So I'll tell you now more about this trading subsidiary. So if you can move to the next slide, thank you. So this trading subsidiary is called the NOC Innovations. So as part of NOC Innovation, we have what we call MARS, which is the Marine Autonomy and Robotic Systems. So we look a lot, we use a lot of new instruments which can be sent in the ocean and take directly measurements without man-made, without having to collect them every day. So we don't have to send ships, and this is what marine autonomy is. And you can see on the bottom right, pictures of what we call gliders, these yellow torpedo that we can send in really rough environment to take measurements, which are very, very valuable. And the first picture is you can see the NOC. So That's our building on the docks with one of our main research crews in front of the NOC. And we are already 2 minutes by the ocean village that you can see in the background. So Mars is dealing with over 20 members from the industry, from SME to global multinationals. And we also focus and collaborate to develop new technology with Planet Ocean. And we also routinely collaborate with businesses on a UKRI opportunity. So UKRI is the UK research and innovation body sponsored by the government to invest in and facilitate research. So can we go to the next slide now? So why do we need healthy oceans? So first of all, the oceans, we know they produce roughly 50% of the oxygen that we breathe is produced by the ocean. So then it's this oxygen is, we breathe this oxygen, the humans, but as well all the animals in the oceans. So we want to maintain this balance of 50%. We don't want to have increasing zones totally depleted of marine life. As well, the ocean is really important to capture the carbon that we emit in our atmosphere, and it can capture up to 25% of this carbon. Then it will sequester this carbon by flowing it in the deep waters and keeping it for hundreds of thousands of years. So it's really important to keep this balance. And it's the same with the excess heat. So all the excess heat that we inject in our planet, most of it is captured by the ocean, which has far more heat capacity. So it can keep more heat than the atmosphere. So most of this heat will tend to go to the ocean. But so we know that 93% of this heat has gone to the ocean, but at some stage, we can't just put more and more heat in the ocean because this balance might as well be shifted in the future if the oceans are warmer than what they are now. And it's really important as well to know if our oceans is important. They will obviously affect, for example, we'll have stronger cyclones if the ocean is warmer. Warmer ocean can as well affect the monsoons and all the rains, so which will have effects on droughts and floods. And also, obviously, a warm ocean takes more space, is less dense, so this has an obvious effect on the global sea level rise. Then the UK is strongly dependent as well, all our exports. So we know that mostly more than half of our food arrives via the oceans. And can we go to the next slide, please? And also a large part of the energy that we use is supplied by the oceans. So we use the tidal energy, wind turbines, or waves energy. The ocean, we know that it's 97% of the ocean of our planet Earth is water. So we tend to call this more as a blue planet than a green planet. And it's as well also really important to know exactly what's behind what's the topography of the ocean, because we know that most of the traffic, the internet traffic and the financial transactions are delivered by undersea cables. So it's important to know as well, to do the research and to know exactly what's the topography of the ocean. And finally, as I said, linked to the oxygen, we need to have the marine life, and 30% of the global protein for 3 billion of people is produced by the ocean. Can we go to the next slide, please? And here we have this, this is the global picture that the ocean is a global thermostat. This is what we call the overturning circulations that shows you in reds all the shallow waters, shallow warm waters going to the poles. Then they become colder, so denser, and they tend to sink and to go southward. So this is the global circulations, which redistribute all the heat and CO2, which is absorbed by the ocean. And we see this as a large overturning circulations, which circulate in the North Atlantic, goes down, go to the Southern Ocean, and then interact with the Indian and Pacific Oceans. So we have to understand that the ocean is a global circulation, and all the effects are really important to know, because what we're going to, if this overturning circulation change somewhere, we might have an effect somewhere else. And at the NOC, we contribute specifically in measuring and monitoring this global circulation at various locations in the North Atlantic. So if we move to the next slide, please. So if our climate is changing, what will be, why is this important? So first of all, as carbon dioxide, CO2 increase increases, the ocean is becoming acidic. And we can see here the death of these coral reefs on these pictures. As the ocean warms, plants and animals must adapt or die. They must move northward or they must die. They must move polewards, actually. And as the oceans warm and the glaciers melt, the sea level rises by 3.3 millimeters per year globally. And we also know that stormier UK winters and heat waves will happen if our climate is changing. Can we go to the next slide now? So how will the climate change affect Southampton and Hampshire? So what we see here is the map of 2050 of the sea level rise. So you see the current water body in blue and what will be below the water level in red here. And this is consistent with about 2 degrees Celsius of warming, which is the main target from the Paris Agreement. So even if the 3 millimeters per year globally might not seem much, this is really important because storms and flood will come on the top of it, and they can also affect more regions. So if we go to the next slides, that's what you see here as what we call the annual flood. So if the floods and the storms are put on top of the main sea level rise, all the coastal zones might be affected by this sea level rise. And 3 millimeters per year is not a large number. It doesn't sound like a large number, but this number is also increasing, has increased in recent decades. If we can move to the next slide now. So what can we do? What are the opportunities for us and for the businesses? So first of all, we need to talk with at the government level. So we need to be engaged with COP26, G7, the Paris Agreement. Then on the individual levels, we have what we call the 4 Rs, the recycle, reduce, renew, and rethink. And then the opportunities for Southampton as a port, what we have learned from the NZOC. So we can support emerging shipping technologies, for example, using new fuels like hydrogens, ammonia, solar power. And we can as well support autonomous shipping like 5G networks needed and more training activities on this. So the biggest challenge is that we need to reduce our use and dependence on fossil fuels. Thank you.
Louis, thank you for that. It's great to know we've got such a strong organisation that's world renowned as a centre of excellence in such a critical topic. And I think those slides of what could happen in our area from the point of view of the annual flood risk as a result of 2 degrees centigrade increase in the average temperature really brings it home how important it is for us to address it, because 2050 is not that far away. So thank you for sharing some of that really fascinating insight. We're going to move on now, and we're going to come up and hear from James Ghaffari, Director of Growth and Product from B Corp, an organisation that supports organisations in providing a certification, a B Corp certification, which brings the importance of purpose aligned to obviously the business agenda. But I'll hand over to James, who will tell us all about it. James.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Julian. Yes, I'm very delighted to be here and to talk about B Corp. And I wanted to just touch on kind of the movement generally, what we're trying to achieve, and also kind of what it does for businesses and what the certification process entails as well. But before diving into that, I really wanted to start with a big idea. And if you go on to the next slide, I think what we've heard from Sarah and Louis at the start of this morning is we have big challenges, you know, and so actually what we need is big ideas, big solutions. And actually this kind of big idea is that we are in the middle of a kind of historical global culture shift. So we're at almost at an inflection point where we are hopefully moving away from this idea that business is just about kind of making money, driving shareholder value, and not kind of thinking about your externalities, to a way in which we are actually able to harness the immense power of business to try and help address some of society's kind of big challenges, environmental challenges, and ultimately to build a more inclusive economy that works for all people. And if you go onto the next slide, you can see that this idea of kind of harnessing the power of business. So just on the next slide, this idea of kind of harnessing the power of business to be a force for good, which is kind of the mantra of the B Corp community, is something that is kind of very familiar and already in the mainstream of public opinion. So this was from a survey, I think 2019, that Edelman did, that's basically showing that the people want to see businesses kind of take the lead on these big challenges, whether that be equal pay, the environment, prejudice and discrimination. And so it really is something that is being driven by citizens, and that expectation and that imperative is being seen even more so, I think, in the wake of the pandemic. And on the next slide, you'll see that we actually did a survey of the British public just at the end of last year. And we found that actually 72% of the British public believe that business should have a legal responsibility to planet and people alongside maximizing profits. And this finding was robust across different regions, political persuasions, and different ages as well. And so what we're seeing is that there really is this expectation from people that business need to kind of step up and play their role in addressing some of these global challenges. And as you can see on the next slide, there's actually been a number of businesses that have kind of, and Microsoft came up before, have made kind of big commitments and big statements about what they're trying to do, from Microsoft, Amazon, BlackRock. They are, we still want to make sure that they are walking the walk. Certainly at the moment they are talking the talk. And what that means is that this idea of business engaging in their sustainability, engaging in managing their impact on the world, has moved very much into the mainstream. And I think everyone probably on this call has heard more about kind of businesses engaging in their social and environmental impact, over the last 2-3 years, and certainly since the onset of the pandemic, than they've ever done in their lives before. And certainly it's on the agenda of most companies, and that's really fantastic to see. And what we are trying to do as B Corp, if you'll see on the next slide, is help in that journey. We want to help get as many businesses from this old way of thinking of just, the raison d'etre of a business is just to drive shareholder value, to a kind of a way of thinking that is more appropriate for the 21st century and the challenges that we have, which is about kind of driving stakeholder value, thinking of all of the stakeholders that affect or are affected by your business, and actually managing your relationship with them and making commitments to the environment, to society, to your workers. And actually, essentially, that is at the core of what the B Corp community is doing. It's a community of businesses that are trying to show this new model, this new way of doing business that, puts people and planet alongside profit, and actually is successful in doing so. And in doing that, they are leaders and they're examples for other businesses to follow. And it creates that framework to say, once we've been convinced that this is a really important thing for our business to engage in and the right thing, who do we look to? What models do we look to? What frameworks do we look to help us on that journey? And so the way in which B Corps do this, on the next slide you'll see, is in 2 key ways. So firstly, they meet high standards of social and environmental performance that's verified. So they do that through our kind of online impact assessment, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And crucially, they also legally commit in their articles, in their governing documents, to considering the impact of their decisions on all stakeholders and not just shareholders. So they actually change their governing documents to say, yes, the status quo for all businesses in the UK right now is that they are only subject to fiduciary duty. But actually, we are going to change the kind of governing rules so that we can make decisions based on a wider, kind of broader lens of the impact of those decisions. And we've actually built this community up to, on the next slide, you'll see over 4,000 certified B Corps in all different industries. So, we have B Corps that are coffee shops, that are consultancies, that are steel manufacturers. And it's fantastic to be able to say that they have the same goal, which is basically redefining what success is in business so that we can build an economy that is inclusive, regenerative, and works for all. And we actually have it's not just in the UK or in Europe or in North America. We have B Corps in Ecuador, Taiwan, and Afghanistan, and it's really important to note that this is a global movement, because without global cooperation, we won't be able to kind of meet the needs of humanity within the means of the planet. On the next slide, you may see some of the brands, the businesses that are already B Corps. So it's it's everything from financial services to communications to tech. I'm probably responsible for about 50% of the growth of Tony's Chocolonely in the UK. That's certainly something that I've been responsible for. But as you'll see, there is a really wide range of big companies, small companies, in all different sectors. And so I just wanted to then touch on how to become a certified B Corp. You'll see on this next slide. So there are really kind of two parts to this. One is about passing that assessment. That is a performance requirement. We are trying to see if a company is meeting high standards of verified social and environmental performance. And we do that through the B Impact Assessment, which is our online self-assessment tool. And essentially this assessment, it looks at the entire operational impact of a company. And so you will be answering questions on your governance, how you treat your workers, your diversity and inclusion, your scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, as Sarah talked about, how you run your supply chain. So it's it's really comprehensive and broad. And actually that assessment itself is part of our verification process and our certification process, but it is also a public good. So it's completely free and confidential. So any business can go on and use it as much as they like. And it is very much a framework and an improvement tool. So it's not just about kind of putting in your answers and then getting a score out and not understanding how it's been created. It's actually all about going through, seeing how your score adds up dynamically, and also seeing what best practices in all different areas of your business. So that's the assessment side of things. And then the legal change is the second requirement, which I've already talked about, which is about actually making that change within your articles of association to say that we want to actually live the values of the company, so much so that we're going to change our governing articles, and we're going to actually evolve the way in which decisions are made at boardroom level, so that when we make those key decisions, we think about, yes, how is this achieving kind of shareholder value, but how do we balance that against the impact this might have on our workforce or on the environment or on our communities. So it's all about kind of having that wider stakeholder impact lens when you're making decisions. So just finally, I wanted to kind of just touch on, not only, we believe, being a B Corp, or over and above that, operating in a way that is sustainable, that is kind of stakeholder focused, is the right thing to do, given where we are within the kind of challenges that we see globally. But it's also, I think, the right thing for your business. On the next slide, you'll see a bit of information on kind of how B Corps perform. We did a community survey last year, and actually out of all of the B Corps that had recruited in the last 3 months, over 70% of them had said that candidates mentioned B Corp in the interview process. And we also did research that kind of evaluated B Corp SMEs against the SME population in the UK. And we found that B Corp SMEs had a lower level of attrition in their staff, and more of their staff would actually recommend their place of work as a good place to work. And so there's a really big employment piece, more and more people wanting to see that their company is living the same values that they live, and they are more engaged and more motivated when they see that. And one other finding that we saw, which was really interesting, we weren't expecting it, was actually that 45% of B Corp SMEs had received or applied for R&D tax credits in the past 3 years, compared to just 6% of the wider SME population. And there's something in that around kind of sustainability and innovation and how they sit together. And so it is certainly something that is not only good on a number of levels for companies to engage in around the success of their business, the resilience of their business in the long term, but also we believe it's certainly the right thing to do. And with that, hopefully I've stuck within my 10 minutes, and I'll hand back to Julian.
Thank you, James. Thanks for that. I think that last page is really powerful, demonstrating the impact that businesses can make on some critical societal agendas like climate change, but at the same time drive real benefits for their business performance. And with that, we're going to hear from two organisations that are certified B Corp, and hear about what it means to them to be certified and the benefits, I'm sure, to their businesses. So I'll hand over first of all to Nancy Hine from True Horizon.
Morning, thanks very much, and thanks for having me. My name is Nancy Hine. I am the founder of True Horizon. I work with businesses to help them really embed sustainability and ethics into their day-to-day operations. And part of that, I am a B leader, which means I have gone through the training that B Lab provides so that I can support businesses in the process of becoming a B Corp. So today, what I wanted to go through is just a few top tips for going through the process that will make it simpler for you and just more efficient in getting you to that B Corp certified status. Next slide, please. So James talked about this, the legal bit. Guys, this is really important. And I think this is what makes B Corp quite unique, about really changing your governing articles. Do not leave this bit to the end. Start having these conversations at the beginning, because it's critical to have people on board, to have the board on board, and people understanding what you're doing and why, and really committing to that legal change in your business. So do not leave this to the end. Get this started at the beginning of the process. Next slide, please. Now, James mentioned the fact that, B Corps come from all industries, all sizes. You can be a one-man or woman band and be a B Corp, or you can be a global corporate. The way this is done is through your track. So getting your track right is very important. So you'll have sort of gating questions that dictate the questions you will see later in the assessment. So you want to make sure, for example, that if you don't have any employees, that you're ticking that box to say that, so that you won't get any questions about your employees. So make sure that that's correct. You can see that on your dashboard when you're doing the assessment. So, and if you get stuck, B Lab are there to help you out as well. But this one's quite important from a sort of technical perspective. Next slide, please. It's not meant to be easy. There is value in this. And the reason there's value is because change is required to get there. I have not heard a single company going through the process without having to make changes. Big companies that really are about sustainability have had to make change to get through this process. So don't get discouraged if it feels difficult. The value in it is that change is required. And so when you get that badge, you know that you've worked hard to get there and you've achieved something. And you also know, what's been achieved by other companies who bear that badge. Next slide, please. This one's really important. Again, B Corp is about change, changing the way we view business, changing the way we operate. Do not leave it to one person to go through the assessment in a silo. Share the load, engage with the business. Those benefits that you're gonna achieve and that you're gonna have as a result of going through this process really should extend across the business. Your employees will see benefits. Engage with them, understand what they want from you as a business. Do not leave it to one or two people. To really make the most of the process, you need to be engaging across the business. And the final one is it's worth it. You're going to hear from Tim shortly on his experiences of becoming a B Corp and what that's meant for his business. It really is worth it. And it's not just reputational benefits. It's, attracting and retaining employees. It's investors starting to ask these questions because they recognize that climate risk is a very real thing, and therefore they want to see how you're addressing that as a business. There's certainly reputational benefits, but cost benefits as well. If you're becoming more efficient and building all of this into your business model, you will see financial benefits as well. And my final slide, I'm not going to delve into the statistics today, just in the interest of time, and because they will be available to you afterwards. But I really want to emphasize what Sarah said. profit and purpose are not mutually exclusive. If you are building this into your business and you're really doing it, not as a tick box exercise, but really to implement change, you will see benefits to your business that go financial benefits as well as sort of reputational benefits as well. Thank you very much. I'm going to pass on to Tim now to give you those insights as a certified B Corp.
Thank you, Nancy. Welcome, Tim. I shall hand quickly over to you.
Hi guys, thank you very much. We're very proud to be alongside the other speakers here today. So I run a business, I launched a business called Amamus, and we're very proudly a certified B Corp. We certified April last year, which was right in the middle of the lockdown one. But I launched a business with my wife fundamentally to make a difference. I left a good job, gainful employment, took a big risk, but it was driven by purpose, and we really wanted to make our kids proud. At the time, we'd never heard of B Corp, so it wasn't on our agenda. But as the business developed, what we found, the lean-in moment for a lot of our clients was when we started talking about our purpose and what we were trying to do, environmental and social, and that got traction. So we became more interested in this space, and we heard about B Corp, and the ambition was there. But as a small business that was growing quickly, there wasn't the opportunity. And then a global pandemic hit. All our clients shut their doors, and we had time on our hands. And so I jumped right in and said, you know what, I want to do B Corp certification. So with excitement and optimism, I clicked open my browser. The road outside was quiet. My phone wasn't ringing. There was no emails coming in. And I thought, let's do this thing. So Sam, if I could have the next slide, please. But it felt like this. It was really difficult. You know, first of all, you're daunted by the huge companies and the sort of amazing companies that are B Corp certified, and there was just little old us. Were we big enough? Were we capable enough? Were we doing the right thing? It was a very long assessment questionnaire, which is brilliant, but it is, again, it's daunting. There's no one really to speak to because B Corp are, you know, a small team. They've got a lot of people who are interested in what they're up to. And we were in a lockdown, so it did feel to me a bit like a fortress. Can I have the next slide, please, Sam? The other thing is, you know, if you really didn't believe in what you were trying to achieve through certification, I think you'd find it very, very challenging and frustrating because the questions are searching. They're difficult and they're meant to be, as Nancy said. And you need to really understand what they're looking for. You need to believe in what you're doing. It's not something that just can be delegated to other people within the business because it's going to look pretty on your headed paper. You've really got to believe in, as Nancy said, everybody's got to buy into the agenda that you're following. So those are my insights sort of pre-certification when I was kind of sniffing around the edges, looking at what we might do. But we continued, we were determined, and we were going to push through. And then so a couple of insights now in terms of actually going through the process, what it felt like. So Sam, can I have the next slide, please? Unlike our friend Steve here, B Corp aren't looking for perfection. You know, we're shipping coffee from around the world on big ships. That isn't perfection at all, but it's necessary for us to be able to drink coffee. And lots of people have said to me, but you know, the glass that we pack our product into isn't all recycled. Does that mean we can't be B Corp? And no, absolutely not. They're not looking for perfection in every area of your business because nobody is perfect. What B Corp are looking for is that you can gather enough points from all the various areas that they're asking questions about to move you into a certified business, the 80 points. So don't be put off if you don't think every area of your business is perfect. You can work towards perfection. I'm going to come on to that. But first stage is really getting through certification. Next slide, please. I'm not a numbers guy at all, and it needs data, a lot of data. Luckily, we're quite a well-organized business because I've got a good team. But QuickBooks, you need to know how far away suppliers are from you, how much you spend with every single supplier. They want to know everything. How much water you're using, electricity you're using. Do you measure this? Do you measure that? And I would suggest if you're thinking about assessments, going into the assessment, start measuring your data. We track everything now. Every cardboard box that we use gets tracked, but it's all driven by our management accounts. And once you understand what you need to measure and track, you can design processes that make it easier for your business to do that. So again, I go back to, it can feel daunting at the beginning, but if you're on board and aligned with this objective, it becomes easier and easier as you go. And then afterwards, reflecting, we got certified. We got, I think, 83 points, and we intend to move a long way on from that. But now we're certified, and I sort of reflect, I think when I had my first child, we were in NCT classes, and the leader said, "You guys are all obsessed with this birth that's coming up, but the bigger job you've got ahead of you, bigger than the birth, is successfully raising your children." And it sort of struck a chord this with B Corp, in that certification is just the start, and you'll obsess about it. Have we got 80 points? Have we made the grade? But once you're through it, you kind of, it sets a path going that's really exciting. It says, you know what, 83 points is nowhere near enough. We want to smash through the 100-point barrier. And I was talking to Cook, one of our clients, the other day, and they went from just over 80 points of certification. They've gone to 104 now in this round of certification. So it becomes a really exciting objective that everyone can buy into. So don't see certification as your first point, but we work with Nancy now, who's just spoken, because once we got through certification, I realized that the big job was about to start, how we continually improve as an organization. And I'm not an environmental analyst. I don't understand all this stuff as well as other people. So let's get them on board to help our business move forward. And then the final slide, please, Sam, is this idea of, it says there a clear and shared direction. It's moved up. But it's absolutely true. Clients who we never thought we would have been able to have spoken to are interested in what we do as a coffee supplier, because they understand that we're not trying to greenwash. If we've got B Corp certification, we are doing things the right way, and we're clearly committed to being a force for good in the sector. So our team, everybody understands why we'll make decisions and what decisions we're going to make and what the outcome will be, because if they don't benefit all our stakeholders and they just benefit shareholders, then it's probably not the right decision to make. So everybody's just fundamentally clear. And I think at the moment we're not recruiting. When we do, I'm sure that people are going to be incredibly interested in the fact that we are certified. So, and there's a great community. You've got questions you can ask the B Corp community. So there's an awful lot of benefits to the efforts that you put in for. And certainly we as a business, we grew up an awful lot through the process of certifying. So if anybody's got any questions, would like to speak to us about this further, Nancy and I are co-chairing Be Local Hampshire, which is a new group that's launched to support businesses in the Hampshire region to certify as B Corp. So please do look us up on LinkedIn. It's a brand new group, and our launch event's September the 7th. So please do be part of that group.
Tim, thank you. That's fascinating to hear you talk about it as a certified B Corp organisation, and how you reflected on it becoming certified, and then the journey afterwards. And I love your parallel about the journey with the arrival of children. The birth is getting, I suppose, is getting on the journey. The journey is then the challenge of raising them, which can be a challenge, but and always room for improvement. So great to hear your story. So thanks for sharing that, and thanks for talking to us, Nancy, about the process of becoming B Corp certified. We're going to move on now and hear from Councillor Daniel Fitzhenry, and that really brings it back to the sort of local area and how Daniel sees the importance of this to the local Southampton and the surrounding area. I'm sure he'll touch on what the council are doing. Before I ask Daniel to share his thoughts, a quick poll question, if I can, and that's how well do you understand Southampton's Green City plan? It'd be great to get some initial feedback on that before Daniel kicks off and shares his thoughts. I'll just give that a few seconds to answer that. Okay, and the results will be coming up any minute. Right, excellent. Well, 45% have some understanding. So we've got over 50% have either a full or some understanding. So I think that's quite good, actually. But hopefully, Daniel, you'll reflect on that as well as you share your thoughts. So don't forget, we've got the Q&A that Kerry will be taking and sharing us through in a minute. So do add any Q&A questions to the panelists. Otherwise, I will hand over to Daniel.
Thank you, Julian. That's great. Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for coming along this morning and for the great speeches that we've and information we've been shared just a moment ago. So it's a real great pleasure to be with you this morning.
Daniel, can you come a bit closer to the screen? You're quite quiet.
Sure. Is that better, Julian?
A little bit. Can I just check others can hear?
Let me just. I could always put my headphones in if that's easier. Can you hear me now,
one of the
Julia?
other panelists, could they hear Daniel? Was he rather quiet as well?
I can hear Daniel okay.
You can. Okay. All right.
Lovely. Great. Thank you very much, Julian. And good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to come along and this morning hear about where we're going as a city and what the opportunities are. So my intention very much is to inspire and motivate you in business and the things that you do day in, day out to do what you do best, which is to create and serve our great city and region and area, to come up with the solutions to the great problem that we have in the climate change challenge ahead of us right immediately and over the coming years. So if we look at Southampton in all of this, we call ourselves the city of opportunity. And what opportunity really means is, as a place, is we want to be somewhere that is a pioneer, a driver, an ambitious city that is at the forefront of everything that is going on in the UK and global economy and social changes as well. And so this, if we look where we are right now immediately, this is a great opportunity for our city to do what we do best. And it's a great opportunity that comes from a very difficult scenario, both in terms of the great global challenges that we face right now in recovering from the pandemic and in the climate change challenge as well. So really what we want to be doing over the coming years is saying, how can we as a city be at the forefront of this city of opportunity? And we see our vision as exactly that. And our mission then is to create that environment where you and colleagues and friends, investors and partners and residents and other businesses can do all the things that you do so well. And really then what we're then looking at doing is how that drives into the wider narrative of creating not only green economy opportunities and jobs and new infrastructure and wealth creation, it also helps to solve some of our great challenges in our city in terms of deprivation and health inequalities and the other things that come with that. But I think what we've got to do is we've got to win hearts and minds. And our job, I'm an eternal optimist. I believe that every challenge is a great opportunity to create something new. And sometimes we can look back and go, we may not have done things in the business world the way they're done now, or the way they were done historically, and we may not have done things in our own lives only a year ago the way that they're being done or would have been done. But actually, that's about the learning and growth that we've got. And it's absolutely paramount, as has been said by previous speakers, that we take people, profit, a place and planet and amalgamate them all together in a way that we can serve. And Southampton will very much be at the forefront of that, and that's where we want to be. And so as we go on this journey to our net carbon zero target of 2050, there's an awful lot of things that we want to do here in Southampton, but actually we need to break it back down and bring it back down to shorter term measurables, because as Tim was just saying, you know, the journey actually starts now, and small daily habits of inspired action, activity lead to long-term change. And the speech earlier and conversation earlier from Lewis, Dr. Lewis from Knox, was very much about small incremental changes are causing, obviously, global sea levels to rise. What we need to do now is turn that round as optimists and as people who have creative solutions and ideas to go, how do we daily compound, weekly, monthly, annually compound the challenges back the other way into opportunities and drive through the solutions to really solve this UK, city and global challenge that we face. So over the next 2 years to 2023, as we emerge from the pandemic, our view and our vision for this city is very much to get Southampton moving, to create the energy, the belief, the dynamism, to unlock the potential, as we've, you know, the heading of this seminar this morning, to really believe, because if we do not change our thinking, nothing is going to change. And we know that Einstein said that we have to think in a different way to solve new problems. We've created this problem, rightly, wrongly, and differently. Now our chance is to unsolve or to uncreate it and solve the challenges. And we have some real immediate challenges as a city as we come out of the pandemic. There are, as of the end of May, 7,800 people still on furlough at the end of May in this city as a whole. As we come out over the next few weeks of, a week Monday of the lockdown and into freedom and the new world, the city will face incredible challenges. And the green economy allows us to use this position and these challenges as going, how do we do things differently? How do we take what we've learned from the challenges we've just had and drive through new innovative ways of doing things? And so as a city, we're going to be creating that high level wrapper and that environmental place that you can do business. And we did this last time we were running the council till 2012, and the Labour administration have been in since have continued on this journey as well. So it's not a new thing for Southampton. And in the next 2 years, as we invest more in our physical green environment, our natural environment, we do more to pioneer where we want to go as a city in our parks, our open spaces. We encourage people to continue the good habits of walking and involving in their community that they've picked up more so during COVID. We can really begin to lift this city and say, we are absolutely ready to go on the next leg of the journey now, on the long-term journey to net carbon zero 2050, but also on the shorter term targets that we have as a city. And all of those as a new council and as administration are being reviewed right now, but we're really focused on action. So what we want to see, we all know that action builds momentum, momentum builds more momentum, and more momentum allows us to achieve the things that perhaps some would say cannot be achieved. And so over the coming months and weeks and to May, I suppose, to the middle of 2023 on the next 2-year journey, we really want to galvanize all that energy and start delivering. COP26 later this year allows the UK to be at the forefront of all of this. Southampton, we want to be there right at the forefront as well. We are always 400 years ago at Mayflower 400 anniversary, or 401 years ago now. We were at the beginning of the New World when people sailed from this city to the North American lands to find a new world. We are always the gateway region to UK PLC and at the forefront of what's going on. And we intend to bring the green economy and the green opportunities in society coming back to that. What we're looking at, obviously, and Joe's very kindly asked, what are the first actions that you're going to take? So we already have a series of green plans that are here in the city. We'll be continuing those. One of those is to deliver the council being net carbon zero by 2030. And we're looking at that and understand how we can do that. That has historically to date, from the previous administration, excluded the council's nearly 16,000 housing units. So of course we need to understand how that will fit. But what really this is about, to be quite frank, is we have limited resources. Our job is an enabler. It's to stimulate, it's to encourage, it's to drive, it's to be at the forefront in creating this environment. And so my big question to all of us is, how can we take this ambition and this vision and this drive and this want, using the resources we have, making ourselves as Southampton the pioneer and the leader in it, and unlocking the potential that we have in our hearts, in our minds, in our belief, in our capabilities to do things. The Freeport is a great opportunity to do that. It really puts us on a global map, and so does our City of Culture bid. That really says to people, look at Southampton in the UK. If we win this bid, and that's our intention, we will know in May 2022, if that is the case, then we can really put our city right on the map in the UK, European and global positioning, both with our Freeport and our City of Culture. And all that comes back to people, ideas, capabilities and opportunities. So, this isn't necessarily just about what the council's going to do in a very sort of, in our own estate and what are the actions we can take. My question to everybody and my push to everybody is, we will do those things, we will lead, but actually as a city, how do we unlock the 256,000 people that we have here potential? How do we lift them up? How do we get them doing community, sports, activities, all the things that they want to do that will create the healthier, more sustainable, more inclusive environment that we want to see? And then let's use that combined energy to go on this journey to 2050, to 2023, to 2025, and to 2030, and really create the city of opportunity that we all want to see. There'll be a ton of things that we announce over the next 6 months as immediate actions, which build on the actions that have already been taken in the natural and the physical environment and investing in infrastructure. But actually right now, let's use our combined capability. Let's use all of the great information and knowledge we've leveraged from today and go out there and make small little changes day in, day out and get going with this. Let's get Southampton moving. Let's deliver for the people and the residents and the businesses and all of you of this city. And let's really make the change that we believe we can see. Thank you, Julian. I'll stop there. I think I'm about on time. And thank you very much for everybody's, there you go, there's my timer, everybody's input today, and looking forward to the questions and answers. Thank you.
Perfect timing, Daniel. But I think I'm going to hand over to Kerry now, who's going to pick up. But thank you for that. Kerry, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Julian. And obviously, thank you to Daniel and to all of our speakers. And good morning, everyone. I hope you feel energised, informed and inspired from what you've heard so far this morning. I hope it's given you a sense of what your own next actions might be, or actions for your own business, as well as also getting that compelling sense of the need for action. I think we can all recognise. I hope you've also seized upon the opportunity that this presents, both for businesses and for the city. So I'm Carey Moore. I'm the Regional Director for the NatWest Corporate and Commercial Business here in the Solent. My bit's the Q&A bit. Time is marching. We do want to get you all away and done by 11. So the next 15 minutes or so before Peter Taylor will close with some closing remarks is for Q&A. And so before we do that, though, we do just have one further poll question, which is just around, if we can run that, Sam, I think. Is your organisation active in supporting Southampton's Green City Plan? So simple yes, no. And when we've done this, we'll run the first question. Yes, really encouraging. So I think Daniel in particular will be really, really enthused by that. And I guess the challenge for this community is how do we kind of make that representative across the whole city? So more on that later, perhaps. Okay, so we'll start with a question from PwC's Green Champion. Eleni, I think you're going to pose the first question. So Eleni Vassiliou, unmuted, I think, and off you go.
Hello, yes, thank you. My question ties in very much with the last poll. So PwC has its very own department around sustainability since 2019. In order to amplify those efforts, we have recently joined the Global Counter Sin Initiative. And through this program, what we're trying is to encourage all our colleagues around all PwC offices to take steps in an effort to reduce their carbon footprint. So at this point, we have just over 190,000 people globally who have signed up in this initiative. Our question as Green Champions is, what would you advise people who believe that this is a matter for our global or for our world leaders to handle, and that they themselves can't have an impact? And additionally, how could the council help support good behaviours in its citizens?
Okay, thank you, Eleni. And we've not heard from Sarah for a while, so I think we could take that question in two chunks. Sarah, COP26 we've heard referenced. I guess that notion of what can we do? That's something on lots of people's minds. Do you want to go first on the first part of the question?
Yeah, I can give you a brief perspective, and it's because I've recently been part of the Scottish government. I'm up here in Edinburgh. Let's Do Net Zero campaign, and they focused on 4 areas for individual action: what we buy, what we eat, how we heat and power our homes, and how we travel. And that might seem really simplistic, but the key to focus on is the one either that you're having the biggest impact on, or that you are able to address in your current circumstances. And this is reflecting the fact that we are all living in different circumstances. And the other issue to consider is if we are able to afford some of the more expensive solutions, we should absolutely be doing that. If we are not, we should be looking at the other options that actually save us money. So for example, what we buy, the best thing to do is buy less of pretty much everything. Sorry, Tim, and I know we want to buy your coffee, we do. But there are a lot of things we buy that we do not need. Every single thing you buy has some form of carbon or greenhouse gas associated with it. So just thinking about that. And if you are a business, you've got to start appreciating the fact that more people will start leading towards that. My last point quickly there, Carey, is make a green or carbon friendly choice easy for people. So don't make it the difficult one, because there are people on this call who make an effort to make these choices. There are others who just want it handed to them. So I would encourage the city, we've got the council here, but also businesses to think about, how do I make it easy for people to make that choice? It doesn't necessarily have to be cheaper, but it almost always has to be easy to make the choice.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. And Daniel, do you just want to add a couple of thoughts just around how the council can reinforce good behaviours in its citizens?
Sure. Thanks, Kerry. Well, I mean, the start thing is that we lead from the front in terms of what we're doing. So the Green City Charter that we've inherited, we're reviewing at the moment, and obviously that has a number of objectives in it. They're all related to the council itself being net carbon zero by 2030. So we're reviewing that to make sure they're deliverable and that they're funded and that they can be done, because those steps that we take obviously send an example and a platform out. I think that the key thing we need to be looking at as a city is, where are the opportunities in the challenges here? Now, obviously, Sarah's just mentioned very ably the key things that we can do in our own individual lives, in the way that we buy, in the way that we act, in the way that we travel, and the way that we do things. And those are very important elements of all of this. And then my job, I suppose, and our job as a city, is to take those on a citywide level and go, how do we exemplify those actions and activities to take us on this journey? And there's an awful lot that we can do there. And as I say, we're reviewing the current plans that sit in place, and we'll be out to Green City Charter partners later on this year on an update on those, and then start to exemplify how they can run through and what the output of that is. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Sarah. And Eleni, thank you for your question. I should say as well, we're joined in the panel by James Wright, who's from a local B Corp business, a brand, certainly a well-known household brand where I live. It's Jude's Ice Cream. So James, thanks for joining. I think, Astrid, you've posed a question for the panel just around which one social change, policy or consumer driven could stimulate the necessary behaviour changes best, and what role do businesses have in this? I think those businesses joining today love hearing from other businesses. So it'd be good to get James's view on that, and perhaps Tim's view. So if you wouldn't mind perhaps going first, James, on that. If James Wright's able to unmute. Tim, do you want to pick up first? Just that question on what one social change, policy, or I guess more for you, consumer driven, could stimulate the necessary behavioural changes best, and what role do businesses have in this? And I guess you touched on it in terms of leading the way as a business, but what's your take on that?
I think the big thing is helping people understand what the problem they're working towards solving are. I mean, obviously, Sarah's talking about the big overall problems that we've got. B Corp's a little more complex because it's not just environmental; it's equally balanced with social too. So it's, and I think again, it's one of the misunderstandings around B Corp is it is just an environmental thing. It's not. So I think it's trying to help understand by buying into that brand or product or company, what problems am I helping to solve? And I think as businesses, we've got to help people understand the problem and how perhaps we're going about addressing those and being part of the solution. I'm not sure we're great at that, but I think that's what we should all be focusing on.
No, I think spot on. And James Ghaffari, I think you had a thought on this as well.
Yeah, sorry. So it's not exactly a social change, but I think it's something. So it's a policy change that can have large social kind of ramifications in a very positive sense. So one of the big campaigns that we're running within the B Corp movement and wider this year is something called the Better Business Act, where we're actually creating a coalition of B Corps, but also other big companies like John Lewis, Iceland, Institute of Directors have all signed up, which is actually calling on the government to amend the UK Companies Act, which would make the status quo for all businesses that they have to consider all stakeholders in their decision making. So similar to the B Corp legal change, those companies that are B Corps are pushing this forward and showing that it can be done. But ultimately, we, in terms of policy agenda that could have a massive impact in kind of steering businesses, helping them understand what they need to do to help us kind of stay within planetary boundaries and meet the needs of all the people that we have here. It's going to be something like that, something really ambitious and comprehensive that actually makes all businesses take into account all of their stakeholders when making those decisions. So that's the Better Business Act. If you want some more information about it, you can go to betterbusinessact.org.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. And Astrid, thanks for your question. James, right, I'm going to put you on standby. Good question here from Ross McNally. Thanks, Ross. What ideas do you have in getting all staff, not just businesses, leadership teams, actively involved in shaping solutions in their own areas of activity and empowering them to shape changes within the business? James Wright.
Thanks, Carrie. I managed to unmute, so success. Yeah, I would just, I think Nancy mentioned it earlier on at the beginning. I think it's so important to get everyone involved. And I think the beauty of it is everyone understands the climate emergency, and we all want to make a meaningful difference. And so I think I can say from our experience, Jude's, we are a carbon negative certified B Corp, and for us it's been really important to get the whole team involved, because by getting everyone involved, you're much more creative and you can be much more innovative in solving lots of different areas. And I think it's been mentioned before, I think Daniel mentioned it about, so lots of incremental changes, little changes that we add them up and they make a big difference. So I would say from our perspective, that's really important, and it's essentially communicating it. Everyone understands this is a really significant issue. And I think just talking to the team, and you'll be amazed how many people want to be involved and want to be active in that.
Fantastic. Thank you. I just have a quick question, selfishly, it's a personal question for Louis, and that's, we've heard about the fantastic facility we have on our doorstep, the world-renowned National Oceanography Centre. How can residents of the city kind of connect with what you're doing at the centre? And are there plans for that now that you're independent? So just some quick thoughts on that would be helpful, Louis, if you could.
Yeah, I don't really have a quick answer for that, but I think there's the National Oceanographic Center is trying to communicate a lot already with the city, and so we have open days where the public is invited to come to the NOC and to discuss with all the researchers and about all our research. And it's particularly good for kids to come and to see what's the research done in the center. And we also go directly to schools and to talk about our research. But everybody is also welcome to come and discuss with us.
Fantastic. That's a great offer. I think, yeah, certainly something I expect us all to learn and hear more about. And I guess one more question before I hand over to Peter. And this is from Megan. And Nancy, I think I'll come to you with this, if that's okay. Just given the breadth of your experience across different businesses in the B Corp space and on the sustainability and climate agenda. And question is, key sectors in Southampton by employee numbers are healthcare, retail, hospitality, education, and professional and support services. What are the key things that would help businesses in those sectors work towards net zero? I guess, as well as getting in touch with you.
Thanks, Carrie. Yeah, I don't know that this is industry specific, but understand your impact, carry out what's called a materiality assessment. So we all have different impacts in the way that we operate, in the way that we live. And Sarah touched on this. You cannot set goals for where you want to be if you don't understand where you're at now. So you need the data to back that up. So start collating this data, understand your baseline, understand where you're at now before you jump into, okay, great, we want to be net zero carbon. So really, that's kind of the first step for any industry, really, is understanding your baseline data. Brilliant.
Okay, Nancy, thank you. And thank you to Megan for the question, and all of you for posing questions. And of course, to our panel of speakers. We're pretty much back on time, or on time, thanks to everyone doing their bit in 10 mins, which was no mean feat. So thank you for that. And I now hand over to Peter. I guess just before I do, thanks to all of you for joining on behalf of us and the panel. I think that lots of things came through today. I'm sure you've all written and scribbled your own thoughts and actions. I guess the collective call to action and that compelling need for us to make a change and really start with that now, or lean into it more if we haven't already, is kind of ringing loud and clear, but I'm sure we've all picked that up. Peter, over to you, if I may.
Harry, thanks very much indeed. And ladies and gentlemen, it falls to me to draw this morning's proceedings to a close. I'm Peter Taylor. I'm the chair of the leadership team of Southampton Chamber of Commerce and also the managing partner of Paris Smith. I hope that you will agree with me that over the last 90 minutes, we've heard and shared some great insights into a key issue which touches us all, and indeed will touch generations to come. Sustainability and how we care for the environment is rightly high on the agenda globally, nationally and indeed regionally. And I hope that you will also feel that you've got some good takeaways. I certainly have from all the speakers, starting with Dr. Sarah Ivory. I love the thought of thinking of this year as the coolest for the next 100 years rather than the hottest of the last 100 years, and thinking about the impact of climate change on business and the impact of business on climate change. We heard from Dr. Louis Clement about the impact that just a few centimeters rise in sea levels could have. And I suddenly fear that my house could be underwater, certainly by 2050. We heard from James, from Nancy, and from Tim about the great leadership and opportunities that B Corp and B Corp Local have in driving change in businesses, and I think putting people and planet far more central in terms of that core purpose of a business. And then from the leader of the City Council, Daniel Fitzhenry, that vision for the future of the city, and collectively we can and we must come together to support the City Council as a business community to effect change. We owe it, as I say, to the future generations to leave the city in good shape. For me, we are collectively the custodians, not only of our own businesses, but also of the brand that is Southampton. And at the last event, there was an overwhelming agreement that for a city, we should have a shared ambition to be a thriving global port destination city. We also agreed that the city is important strategically, both nationally and globally. And on this key issue of sustainability, isn't it right that we take the lead as a group of business leaders, working collectively with the City Council, working collectively with all stakeholders across the city and across the region to effect change? I would not want this session this morning simply to have been a very nice 90 minutes, a bit of a talking shop. Let's have a call to action. Let's effect change, and let's effect change now. We can do so. We can do so within our own businesses. As James Wright said, engaging with everybody across your organization, they'll all have brilliant ideas, and nobody has all the ideas. If we collectively pull together and share ideas, we can make a difference. We can affect change. And certainly on behalf of the business community in the city, the Southampton Chamber of Commerce will continue to engage with Daniel, with Sandy Hopkins, his chief executive, and the rest of the team at the City Council, so that collectively we can work together to make a sustainable difference and create that strong strategic narrative which embodies the environment for the future. For me, having a thriving commercial port does not need to be at odds with us looking after the environment and sustainability for the future. So it falls to me to say a very warm and heartfelt thank you to all our speakers, to Dr. Sarah Ivory, to Dr. Louis Clement, to James Ghaffari, to Nancy Hine, to Tim Wookey, and of course to the leader of our City Council, Councillor Daniel Fitzhenry, and for James Wright for joining in on the panel. I'd also like to thank Vicenza and Sam Nunn working behind the scenes in providing the platform. And on behalf of the hosts, the Chamber of Commerce, NatWest and PwC, thank you very much indeed for giving up your time this morning and joining us. We shall run further sessions, but please do feel free to give any feedback to Julian, to Kerry, to myself. This debate will continue, we will have action, and we very much hope that you will share us and be part of the journey to effect change for our thriving global port destination city that is Southampton. Have a great morning, have a great rest of the day, and thank you for joining us. Take care, bye-bye.